The ocean. 332,519,000 cubic miles of water with an average depth of 2.3 miles, completely submerging over 70% of our entire planet, and yet, we know very little of the secrets it may hold in the dark and cold fathomage beneath its turbulent surface. Some say that in those crushing depths, there could be treasure. There could be the remnants of a lost civilization, and others have recounted their tales of traversing the merciless seas and have come back with a portentous message to all who would follow in their wake seeking adventure. Hic sunt dracones. Here be dragons. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to Insomnia. I'm your host, Adrian Ladelia, and let's get right into it. While we may have covered stories which have brought us all over the world, and some even amongst the stars, we have yet to touch upon any that truly explore one of the Earth's greatest and most awe-inspiring features. The oceans. And where to start, really. One could easily be enraptured in the myriad of stories and legends that have all found their place among the waves. But we're talking about certain tales which still to this day completely overwhelm the imagination and challenge many explanations put forth. Encounters on the high seas far stranger than any ghost ship or mysterious occurrences. We're talking about sea serpents and other monsters of the deep. Mankind has never shied away from confronting the elements in a never-ending pursuit of knowledge and adventure. And when it came to braving the merciless sea, some sources say that man has been seafaring since prehistoric times, some 100,000 years ago, roughly speaking. While the technology and navigation available to sailors has dramatically improved in more recent times, the dangers of such occupations on the water ultimately have not, with sailing and fishing-related jobs having the second highest mortality rate in the world, right after logging. As such, the seafaring type also traditionally tended to be quite superstitious in their ways, as well as spiritual. The idea of constantly being at the mercy of the unrelenting environment had a way of, doing that to people. Take whistling, for example, as most sailors would all refrain from doing so for fear of the wind taking the gesture as a slight against it, which could ultimately bring about a bad storm. Some other precautions that many sailors would participate in was tattooing, but not necessarily for the fashionable sense. See, many nautical men believed that the symbols drawn on their flesh acted as talismans of sorts, which could help to ward off ill effects or bring good fortune. Some pretty notable examples were images of swallows, as they were a bird that was always known for finding its way home. Anchors were also popular as they represented stability and one's connection to both dry land and their loved ones there. You can see how both these symbolically make sense in the context of being at sea for anywhere from months to years. More interestingly, though, some tattoos like chickens and pigs were also common, and usually tattooed together. The story goes both ways. One suggests that because those animals can't swim, during a shipwreck, God would intervene and lift them to shore, and conveniently the sailor with them. Another symbolic aspect of the chicken and pig was that they were believed to ward off hunger and starvation. And finally, another interesting idea was tattooing the image of a cross onto the sailor's foot, or the soles of the feet, with the idea being that the holy icon actually warded off sharks. While their superstitions and very real concerns like sharks may seem dangerous, there have been far worse threats reported, one slowly swimming beyond the lines of the explainable and into the realm of the supernatural. While the idea of ocean exploration has existed for all of documented history, generally speaking, worldwide exploration became mostly accessible in the 15th century when ships had reached their most stable design with multiple masts and riggings, allowing for longer distances. This was a time period that would last until the 18th century, known as the Age of Discovery, and many peoples and cultures would set sail for new lands and attempt to map the world around them. While aboard their vessels, sailors would oftentimes report some extraordinary things. lights off in the distance with seemingly no discernible source, sometimes even emerging from beneath the water. Mermaids and merfolk, which traditionally have actually been described as bad omens, despite their portrayals in popular media. And of course, the many tales of monsters. Just looking at any of the contemporary maps of the time reveal frightening images of fantastic creatures emerging forth from the surf. For these uncharted territories meant you were in the domain of these leviathans, under the constant eye of the devil Jonah, which many say is the source for the name Davy Jones, the master of all demons of the deep. Sea monsters come in all shapes and sizes, and based on a lot of their descriptions, the variations seem endless. They have been described as having humped backs, which rise and fall as they move, long-necked and serpentine-like, oscillating slowly either below or above the surface, lizard-like, or even saurian in appearance. Some have been described as squid-like or resembling an octopus, such as the legendary kraken of Nordic lore. Others have even been described as having horse-like heads, complete with long, hairy manes. However, today we're going to focus on a select few stories, and some of my personal favorites. Our first story brings us back to August of 1848 aboard the HMS Daedalus, a Royal Navy warship en route to St. Helena Island in the southern Atlantic Ocean. The voyage had been going smoothly enough until movement was spotted in the waters not too far from the ship and was rapidly drawing closer. The whole crew had gathered to see the spectacle when they were awestruck by what happened next. From the tempestuous waters, a serpentine-like head emerged and carried itself some 4 to 5 feet above the surface, its reptilian eye impassively acknowledging its dumbfounded audience. As the creature moved with ease through the surf, the crew was able to view its trailing length, which was reported to be all of some 60 feet. Not long after, the creature submerged itself and was never seen again. Many explanations have been posited as to what the true identity of the serpent may have been, everything from a misidentified baleen whale to a giant oarfish, but based on the illustrations provided, these explanations seem to fall a bit short. Our next stories take us a bit further in time to 1914 and the beginning of the First World War, and with it, the development of new types of naval warfare. In particular, we're talking about the Unterseeboot, or U-boats as they were commonly referred to as, submarines of German design which exceeded at sinking both naval and merchant vessels, though some argue they exceeded far more so at the latter. Nevertheless, the Germans would wreak havoc on the high seas, such as with the sinking of the RMS Lusitania, which heavily contributed to the United States' entry into the war. But we're focusing on two stories that no blockade could ever have seen coming. Indeed, because they came from below. This story brings us to July of 1915. The German U-boat SMU-28 has spotted its prey and begins its approach. Its target? The SS Iberian, a British cargo ship en route from Manchester to Boston. The attack was quick and without mercy. The torpedoes were launched and all landed direct hits. The ship was going down fast, and the U-boat moved in for the final blow. As the ship went under, her boilers erupted in a massive explosion, and no one could have expected what happened after. A giant aquatic animal was witnessed being hurled from the blast. The crew described it as resembling a crocodile in appearance, and measuring about 70 feet in length. When the flames died, the creature was nowhere to be found, and it was never seen again. Until 3 years later, the U-boat UB-85 was captured by British forces while stranded off the coast of Belfast, Ireland. Upon interrogation, the commanding officer, a Gunther Kreck, explained what had left them adrift and afraid. While surfacing to recharge the ship's batteries, the crew felt a powerful impact which many thought was a collision with shallow reef. Before anyone could react, a massive creature emerged from the dark waters. Described as having eyes as wide as shields and fangs that glistened in the moonlight, it grabbed a hold of the ship's side, and its weight caused it to lean wildly. The captain, fearing the ship may flood or be capsized, ordered all hands on deck and to open fire on the beast. A barrage of gunfire sent the creature reeling back into the depths, but it was short-lived. Immediately after, the creature appeared once more on the opposite side and continued its assault. The crew managed to fend the creature off back into the abyss, but not before sustaining heavy damage and flooding, leaving them stranded where they were. So what really happened? Is it possible that there could still be prehistoric creatures lurking in the depths of the vast oceans? The only creature that seemingly could fit the descriptions was a type of mosasaur, but this would seem impossible as they died out over 65 million years ago. While the first story seems a bit harder to verify, the second tale has gained quite a bit of attention as of late due to the wreckage of the sub actually having been discovered around October of 2016, so who knows? Maybe some evidence as to what truly happened will turn up, but for now, what I want to know is what you guys think. Comment below. Got any favorite stories about the ocean? I want to hear all of them. I'm your host, Adrian Ladelia, and this is Insomnia. Oh, the times was hard and the wages low. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. And the grub was bad and the gales did blow. And it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. For the voyage is done and the winds do blow. And it's time for us to leave her.